Todos estos meses, todo el tiempo de marcha por mi familia, por la comida, por el pueblo.
In 2016, as Venezuela's economy was in a total freefall, the government announced a massive plan to save the nation. It was called the Orinoco Mining Arc, a special economic zone, rich in gold, diamonds, and coltan. Officials promised it would haul in billions of dollars, create jobs, and kickstart a new era of prosperity. This mineral wealth was supposed to be turned into food, medicine, and stability for the Venezuelan people. The government swore it would be an orderly, sustainable project, a model for the future. But this territory, an area larger than Portugal carved out of the pristine Venezuelan Amazon, didn't become a national savior. Instead, it has descended into a violent, lawless nightmare. It's a hellscape of environmental ruin and human misery, controlled not by the state, but by brutal criminal syndicates known as Sindicatos. So, how did a plan to rescue an economy transform a vast, protected jungle into a criminal free-for-all, seemingly with the blessing of the very government that created it? That's what we're here to find out. To understand how things got so bad, you have to rewind to the mid-2010s. Venezuela, a country sitting on the world's largest oil reserves, was collapsing. Global oil prices had cratered, and decades of mismanagement had crippled its national oil company. The government of Nicolas Maduro was running out of money, and fast. On top of that, international sanctions were starting to bite, cutting off access to global financial markets. Desperate for a new source of cash, Maduro turned to a fabled treasure that has lured outsiders for centuries: the immense mineral wealth buried beneath the Amazon. In February 2016, he signed a decree creating the Orinoco Mining Arc. At over 111,000 square kilometers, it's a staggering expanse of territory, covering 12% of the entire country. The vision was to formalize the region's chaotic small-scale mining, bring in foreign investment, and funnel the profits through the central bank to fund the struggling state. The government even projected it would yield nearly $5 billion in revenue from gold alone in its first year. On paper, it looked like a lifeline. Venezuela would pivot from its dependence on oil to its second great natural resource, gold. The problem? This part of the country wasn't empty. It's home to dozens of indigenous communities, pristine national parks, and some of the most ancient and biodiverse ecosystems on the planet. And from the very beginning, the project was unconstitutional, pushed through without the approval of the democratically elected National Assembly. The government didn't just ignore warnings from scientists and activists, it actively set the stage for a catastrophe. The government's grand vision of an orderly, state-run mining sector never happened. Instead of foreign corporations and regulated operations, the power vacuum in the mining arc was filled by something far more sinister. Violent criminal gangs, known as Sindicatos, many born in Venezuela's brutal prisons, took over. They were soon joined by armed groups from neighboring Colombia, like FARC dissidents and members of the ELN, all drawn by the promise of lawless gold. These aren't just illegal miners, they are the absolute authority. They impose a brutal form of control over the entire region. The stories that have emerged from the mining arc are horrifying. Miners, many of them desperate Venezuelans fleeing the economic crisis, are forced to work 12-hour shifts in hazardous conditions for just a fraction of the gold they find. The Sindicatos can demand up to 80% of a miner's earnings. In the mining towns, everything from food to medicine is paid for not in cash, but in grams of gold, with the price controlled by the gangs. If you step out of line, the punishment is medieval. Those accused of theft or defying a gang's authority face public amputations, shootings, and have even been buried alive as a warning to others. Human Rights Watch has documented numerous cases of macabre violence, with victims dismembered in front of their fellow workers. This isn't just crime, it's a systematic reign of terror. Human trafficking is rampant, with women and girls forced into sexual exploitation, and child labor is common, with kids as young as 10 working in the dangerous pits. And all this violence happens with near total impunity. The state isn't absent, it's complicit. Perhaps the most shocking part of this story isn't the brutality of the gangs, but the role of the Venezuelan government and its military. Officially, the army is in the region to combat illegal mining and secure the territory. But on the ground, a very different reality is playing out. The military isn't fighting the criminal groups, it's in business with them. Countless reports from organizations like the International Crisis Group and the United Nations have documented this collusion. Military commanders run checkpoints leading into mining areas, not to stop criminals, but to extort them. They control the flow of essential supplies like gasoline and machinery, taking a cut from the gangs for access. In many areas, a functional alliance exists. The military provides logistical support and turns a blind eye, while armed groups run the mines and share the profits. This corruption reportedly goes all the way to the top. The Maduro government has used the gold sector to maintain the loyalty of its military elite and high-level political officials. Control over mining areas has been handed out to loyal state governors, effectively turning regional governments into partners in this illicit trade. The state itself has become part of a vast criminal enterprise. While the government occasionally announces crackdowns on illegal mines, observers say these are often for show, or just signs of a power shift, where one criminal group is replaced by another that's more favorable to the local military commander. The system of state-sponsored crime remains intact. It's a perfect storm of criminality, where narco-terrorist groups, prison gangs, and corrupt state officials all come together, united by the lure of gold. The destruction in the Amazon is devastating. Illegal mining is responsible for massive deforestation, tearing down ancient forests to create toxic, mercury-filled pits. The mercury used to separate gold from or has poisoned entire river systems, contaminating the water supply for local communities and leading to severe health crises, including a surge in malaria and birth defects. Organizations like SOS Orinoco have been working tirelessly, often at great personal risk, to document this ecocide, and their findings reveal the true scale of the unfolding environmental crisis. So where does all this gold go? Very little of it ends up in Venezuela's central bank to buy food and medicine, as promised. Instead, estimates suggest that dozens of tons of blood gold are smuggled out of the country every year, worth billions of dollars. This gold is moved across the border into neighboring countries like Colombia and Brazil, or flown directly to hubs in the Caribbean, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. Once outside Venezuela, it's easily laundered, melted down, and mixed with legally sourced gold, effectively erasing its violent origins. From there, it enters the global supply chain, potentially ending up in the electronics in our pockets or the jewelry we wear. International bodies have urged gold buyers and refiners to implement stricter controls. The OECD, for instance, has concluded that any gold coming out of Venezuela should be considered high risk for financing conflict. The United States has even imposed sanctions targeting Venezuela's state-run gold company, Minerven, for its role in the illicit trade. But the flow is hard to stop. For the Maduro regime, this criminal trade has become a crucial financial lifeline, a way to bypass international sanctions and generate off-the-books revenue to pay its loyalists and prop up its security forces. The great irony is that the Mining Arc, a project designed to save Venezuela's economy, is now actively funding the very criminal and corrupt networks that ensure the country remains in crisis. The story of the Orinoco Mining Arc is a tragedy on a colossal scale. A plan born of desperation has morphed into a state-sanctioned criminal enterprise, sacrificing a pristine part of our planet and its people for a stream of dirty money. It's a horrifying example of what happens when the rule of law completely collapses and a government sees its own territory not as a nation to protect, but as a resource to plunder. The vast wealth being extracted from the ground isn't saving Venezuela. It is being siphoned off by a cabal of corrupt officials, brutal warlords, and international smugglers. Left behind is a trail of environmental devastation that may be irreversible and a human rights catastrophe that continues to unfold in the shadows of the Amazon. The Promise of El Dorado has been revealed for what it truly is: a curse paid for with blood, mercury, and the soul of a nation.